Dr. Dana Tassone with participants in HFT 6228, talking today about Chapter 13, which is concerned with leadership. And, leadership is something that is a phenomenon, and it's a phenomenon because nobody has really identified exactly what it is. And it's also, relative to management, it's also a very understudied field. Studies in leadership, research in leadership, became popular in the late 90s. So relative to management, it's a new area of research. Management has been studied research-wise for nearly 100 years. This is not the case so much with actual leadership. And you remember the early days of management studies were engineering-based, and they didn't pay attention to the influence skills relative to the field. And for that purpose, leadership didn't become popular until a much later time. Management is supported by the scientific method. Leadership researchers attempt to apply, and not attempt, they really do apply the scientific method in the study of leadership. But to this day, it really isn't defined. I know we all think we know what it is, but it really isn't defined. As a matter of fact, there was one study with executives, where they said, "Well, what's leadership?" And they would say, it's when a guy does this, and a lady does this. Yeah, but what is it? Well, it's when they do this. And well, what is it? And usually in this study, the executives finally would say, "I don't know what it is, but when I see it, I know what it is." And that's why it's a phenomenon. We really don't know what it is. Also, we know that leadership is different. It's a different term. It has a different connotation than leader. And leaders are different from leading. And to lead is originally intended as a verb. You lead this. He, she leads him. But now, of course, it's used as a noun. I'm a lead. That's my job. I'm a lead. So it's a funny field because a lot of people are doing really nice work with it, but to this day, we still haven't pinpointed, I guess, what it really is. I used to read, I still do, I read articles all the time about it, and in most cases, I find that the authors are talking about what it isn't, but they don't conclude with what it really is. And so, so in the text, we have to assume, and we're taking this from a practitioner's perspective anyway, we just assume the simplest definition that we can of leadership, and it really boils down to the power to influence individuals to willingly do something or not do something. So they intrinsically want to do something that they want, and the leader coaches those people, motivates those people, which is the next chapter, motivates those people to want to do these things for constructive purpose. And so individuals who possess the power to influence others are leaders. And when leaders are practicing, when they're in the practice, they are leading. They're engaging in a relationship practice of convincing individuals, groups of individuals, to accomplish constructive goals, constructive behaviors. Behaviors is a better word. And so the practice of leadership is, that's where it comes down to, I can't tell you what it is, but I'll know it when I see it. And of course, that leads to the old story, or the old argument, if you will, nature-nurture argument. Can leaders be trained? Can individuals be trained to become leaders? Or, as Machiavelli, Niccolo Machiavelli would say, or are they born to lead? Machiavelli wrote the well-known document called The Prince. He was a pseudo-aristocrat in Florence, and he was a person who made his way into nobility, or not nobility, into government. He was really a government bureaucrat. He was a person who made his way into government favorship, favoritism, by presenting articulate documentation that would be acceptable to those individuals in power. And he wrote this document called, he wrote a number of books. He wrote this book called The Prince. And The Prince was the document, the original document that people go back to, that establishes that leaders are born, not made. And his whole concept, the reason that Machiavelli or Machiavellianism has a negative connotation, is that the Prince purports that individuals should be manipulated in a covert way, not in a way that suits them, but in a way that would suit the nobility. And so the pretense that the document gives us is that that people should be manipulated, and that they want to be manipulated. And what a lot of people don't know is that Machiavelli, all of his writings, Machiavelli said a lot of things really kidding. He was tongue-in-cheek. They were tongue-in-cheek things. And of course, people take things literally, and when they take things literally, they become offended. And so his name today is associated with offensive leadership thought, I guess. So if you are a leader, you're going to lead. So if you're going to lead, you have to lead someone. So every leader needs at least one follower. And the follower follows the leader. And is the leader, has he or she been a leader only in his or her lifetime? Probably not. Leaders, good leaders, not the ones who call themselves leaders, good leaders are very good followers. In fact, and I've done this, where did I do this? I did this in workshops of some kind, where going into the workshop, we knew everybody's background, we knew everybody's profile, and we knew what everybody thought about the people in the workshop. And so we had a consensus of opinion, and what we would do is throw out a task, and some kind of a project or something, and the people would engage. It would force them to sort of engage and some people automatically assumed the lead. They immediately started leading the others. And then others sat back. And then as the process continued, a scenario would happen where in the project we would structure it so that the leader the person who chose to lead would not be very successful, and to bail that person out, somebody would jump in and take over. And it turns out that those people that jumped in were really the good leaders, very effective leaders. So a good leader doesn't jump on the lead. The leader doesn't lead for the sake of leading. The leader doesn't lead for the sake of the power trip of it. The leader leads when he or she is asked to lead, when it seems like the viable thing to do. And I remember in grad school, we used to joke with each other about that, oh, I'll defer to my learned colleague. And we would give the lead to somebody else to keep from getting stumped. And when somebody did get stumped, somebody else would step up, no matter survival, somebody else would step up and take the lead for them. So those are the people that seem to be true leaders, whatever they are. We still don't know what they are. And but we do know this. We do know that individuals engage vis-a-vis interdependent relationships. And we've been talking about that when we talked about systems. It's all about interdependency, not dependency, not independency, interdependency. And so if that's true in personal relations, and I'm talking about professionally, in personal relations, then there must be a benefit to both parties. And so in the process of leadership, the leader and the follower must benefit. Otherwise, the follower will not lead and the leader will not be able to engage a follower. And then the third factor that impacts this relationship is the environment. And the environment is commonly referred to as the situation. And the situation is an influencing factor on the ability of a person with a given leadership style to either lead effectively by adapting his or her style to that environmental factor. And environmental factors include all kinds of things, the people, the personalities, the situation at hand, all of those types of things. To adapt, and if that doesn't happen, then the leader will be rendered leaderless because he or she's in the wrong environment. Now, you've seen that a million times. A person's successful in this environment but not successful in that one. And the reason is that the environment was not suitable to that person's chosen style. And style, personality, right, is preference. Personality is preference given a situation. What's a situation? A situation is an environment. So it's a person's preference for behavior in an environment. So, and that's why we urge people to be cognizant of their leadership styles. We all have a style. And what's a style? It's a preference. We all have a leadership style. Everybody, whenever we see, we talked about this earlier in the course, but whenever we see something like that, it's a continuum. It's not a polarized black-white. Whenever we see a personality disorder or any of those types of things, you're sliding back and forth. And so what's your style? Your style is which way do you have a tendency to gravitate toward? And then what's your flexibility? The ability to, at some point, gravitate to the other side. And then, we talked about this early on, there are people who have a task-oriented style, and there are people who have a relationship-oriented style. Nothing wrong with either one. If I'm a task-oriented leader, I'm going to be sure to surround myself, my lieutenants, with relationship-oriented leaders. Why? Because we have balance. And for me, that has served me very well in my career. And there's a factor of stewardship, servant leadership, big buzzword. A lot of these leadership terms are literally abused buzzwords, I guess, sometimes, in my opinion, anyway. But what's stewardship? Stewardship is taking care of people. As long as you're not the stewarding department in the kitchen. Well, even them, they take care of people in the best way. I mean, we die without those people. So that's what stewardship is. You sacrifice yourself for somebody else. That's what servant leadership is all about. And when we look at the great names over history, and I'm talking 5,000 years, they were all steward leaders. They were servant leaders. They believed in the concept of stewardship because service is the element that human relations are contingent upon. And so people early on, and even to this day, people have a tendency when they try to define. We're still trying to define this thing, this phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. We can't figure. We don't really know what it is. We gave you a definition. It's the power to influence others intrinsically to do or not do something. But that doesn't really define it. It's the best we can do, best I can do at this point. So when in the quest to identify what leadership is, we start to identify factors associated with leaders, and the big one, or the big definitions, were the trait theories of leadership, which focus only on the characteristics of the leaders. And a good leader is trustworthy. A good leader is a good communicator. A good leader is charismatic. A good leader is an effective visionary. All of these things. These are the characteristics that comprise a good leader. And again, there's no right or wrong. People love to be literal, and there's no right or wrong. There just is. And what one person thinks are great characteristics of a leader, another person thinks, oh no, these are much better. But that was all an attempt, and continues to this day, just to be an attempt to define what leadership is. And if we stay with trait theories, the characteristics associated with the individual, the leadership individual, one of the big ones is empathy. Empathy. I just had a conversation with a very, very close friend, and we were talking about something very, very depressing, and we kind of engage in the same practice as far as helping people, and we had to talk about you can't help the person unless you've been there, and that's empathy. Good leaders are empathetic. A good leader can put his or herself in other people's shoes. Why? Because they know what it feels like. They can feel. They're really good coaches, really good interventionists are not people who work from the brain. They're people who work from the heart. We call it heart. Those are people who can empathize. They can feel the pain of another person, and they help them by feeling that and by appealing to their emotions. So, emotion, right? Emotional intelligence. Oh, some people, they catch that, they hook on to that phrase, emotional intelligence, EI. Daniel Goleman's the guy who made it famous. Somebody else discovered it before him. And everything's emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence. Well, let's simplify it. It's empathy. It's empathy. Can you feel what they feel? That's emotional intelligence. And then they say, well, on as far as trait theories, characteristics of a good leader is that they must be ethical. And yes, they do require subscription to a code of ethics, but we learned back in whatever, chapter 3 or something, that ethics can also be subjective relative to what? The environment. What's leadership? Leadership has to do with the leader and the follower and the environment. So see how it all comes together. There have been great leaders over time who are not famous. They're infamous. Why? Because they did bad things. To this day, there are people that probably are pretty charismatic leaders, but they do bad things to other people. But are they being ethical? They're being true to some value that some group of people subscribe to. So yeah, in the eyes of their followers, they are being ethical, even though the rest of the world would view it quite differently. So why do you need to be a leader? You know, you can be a manager, you know, and you can manage things, and you can be a good communicator, and you can be a nice visionary. You can have that, you know, that talent of vision, and you can articulate that vision, and you can get people to buy into it. You know, but why be a leader? Why do you have to lead them on the path? And one of the major factors, and this is the reason that leadership became popular in organizations, it was popular in the military and philosophy way before this, but in organizations, is because organizations, as we know, are dynamic, and if they're dynamic, that means they're ever changing, and if they're ever changing, then they require change agentry, and who does the change agentry? The process of enacting change, it's the change agent, and who best to be a change agent than a leader? Because a person who has that capacity, that power to influence other individuals, can successfully enact change. And speaking of power, and leadership really is it is all about power. It's personal power. I love simple definitions. You know that it's personal power, but it's not power dumb. It's not the ability to coerce, because that won't work. You know, that only works, you know, at a very shallow level. The power to influence must be shared. That's the power of power. And good leaders know how to do this. You know, you share your power with other people. And how do you do that? Well, what you do is you, in my practice, you would originally engage with, you have a group of followers, and you would originally engage with them on a transactional level. And what's that mean? That means in the now. It's leadership in the now. And so we're focusing on the relationship in the moment. So we go in, we do the job, we go home, we come back tomorrow, we do it again. That's transactional leadership. We transact to what? Influence others to what? Willingly perform, behave in a constructive manner to do what? To accomplish a goal. So that's transactional leadership. So in my practice, our first relationship, like a first date for maybe 2 years, okay, would be transactional leadership. We would transact. And I wouldn't ask for you to invest in me. Just give me the time, do the motivating thing, and do it the way it needs to be done, and go home. Now, as is the case with all relationships, what if the relationship evolves, and it becomes more than just a change of transactions? Well, in that case, it becomes a relationship for a purpose. Well, what would be the purpose of engaging in a long-term relationship that is meaningful? Well, in the case of leadership, you're a person. You have knowledge, skills, and abilities that you can impart on somebody else. And you possess the power to help them transform. Assuming that they're achievement oriented, you can help them achieve for themselves. And so you're helping to transform those people into leaders. Leaders beget other leaders. Transactional leaders, they lead the followers. When you choose to engage in a relationship of transformational leadership, we're bringing the follower into leadership ability. So many times that is misdefined in texts and in research. They say transformational leadership is about getting a person to do something that serves the organization and serves the leader. That's not it at all. It's what we call a triple win. It's a win-win-win with transformational leadership. I invest my time in a person. Person invests his or her time in me. I share tricks of my trade, and he or she becomes more prone to adopt a leadership position. And he or she begins to lead other people. And when he or she becomes more and more effective as a leader, then who wins? The person wins. I win. That person is transformed into doing what I was doing the whole time myself. So I win, they win, and the organization wins. That's a triple win. So so many people don't define that appropriately, and we gotta go soon. But and then just recently, some forward-thinking people have identified a concept that I like to call transcendental leadership. It's not transactional, it's not transformational, it's even above that. It's transcendental, to rise above oneself. And what's the power in that? The power in that is this is one thing we know for sure. The power in that is the leader didn't get to where she is if he or she did not possess a strong foundation of self-awareness. And she absolutely believes like we talked about with systems. He or she believes in individual, personal evolution through continuing contemplation leading to enhanced self-awareness. So he or she is becoming a self-leader. She is not only leading others, she is also leading herself, and she is growing and manifesting. And when that happens, that's a leader's leader. I don't think we talk about it in this course, but I talk about it somewhere. That's a leader's leader. That's a leader who shows other leaders how to become more aware leaders. And a word of caution is there's some prof in this capstone course in this program who asks people to go through the process of enhancing that awareness in themselves. But so don't take that prof. And we're way out of time. And we have, I think motivation is the next chapter. And I'll see you in the